Thanks for listening to Fluff and Crunch, where we talk about the connection and sometimes disconnect between system, setting, and story in tabletop RPGs. Hello, and thank you as always for listening, or in this case, watching. If you're looking at me right now. This is our last episode of the calendar year, and hopefully Chris and I will be able to schedule a year-end review and looking forward episode like we've done for the past couple of years. Hopefully we'll be able to get that done very early in 2025 or maybe very late in 2024 and have it out in 2025. But this one's dropping on Christmas Day, which means I genuinely hope you are not watching it or listening to it on Christmas Day because you're doing Christmas stuff. That would be way better. But I had a couple of things that I wanted to talk about for a bit in closing for this year. This is in response to a post I saw on X. Now, a quick aside about my X activities before I get into it. X is such a funky platform because, well, first off, my social media consists of X, Facebook, and I dabbled with Reddit a couple years ago. And just for whatever reason, Reddit never presented to me things, or I never saw things on Reddit in which I was interested when I was in it. And then I'd hear about all the yucky stuff that people would get from Reddit from elsewhere. And I didn't necessarily see that myself, but I just never found much utility in it. Facebook is an interesting one for me because actually I don't have to really deal with it for work because I have like a third-party system that enables me to post my work stuff that has nothing to do with my gaming stuff to Facebook. But Facebook on my personal account has turned into me going and scrolling through and blocking trash that appears, not even advertisements, but just like stupid profiles that show up and show me stupid memes in which I have zero interest, or bands in which I have zero interest. And so I honestly, well over half, probably over 3/4 of my Facebook activity consists of me blocking profiles of trash that just clouds my my feed. So X has been it, but X I found to be, and maybe, hey, comment on this if there's a way around this, or maybe this is your experience, but X seems to me to be a place where it doesn't take a whole lot of clicking on articles or posts of a certain type to then be flooded with those. And so I have been working really hard with the Fluff and Crunch profile to just stick to gaming stuff. So to that end, I saw someone post about, it was unsolicited and good advice that as a GM, you should just relax and you should enjoy it because you're there to have a good time as well. And so I commented and said a couple of things, and then the person responded with a heart, and then some other people liked it and stuff like that. So I wanted to take a moment and talk about what I said, and talk about what I said in response to what I think is it's a misrepresentation of what a GM ought to be. What I think is that the image of the GM for a lot of people who are young in the hobby or coming into it is distorted, isn't healthy, and isn't actually sustainable for the people who become GMs. And what I mean is a game master is not a master storyteller, a master of voices and characterization and in-the-moment role play of NPCs. The GM is not there to ensure, underline that word, ensure that you as a player have a good time. The GM is not there to indulge each and every player's, as I like to call it, tortured backstory and the demands that come implied in those things. And the GM is not there to frankly pander to you by handing your character victory after victory after victory so you feel good about yourself. A GM is a special type of player at the table who takes on a much greater burden and responsibility than anyone else at the table and puts in more than likely far more work than anyone else at the table, but is there to have a good time as well. And this person hopefully has a life away from the table. And this person brings with them ideas and hopes for what they're going to get out of the game. I mean, a good GM, and we've talked about this on other episodes on the show, I mean, a good GM will make sure that he understands what his players are interested in. And a good GM will gather together a group of players who operate within a common zone of interests and limits. So a little bit of background on this is another thing, why I was thinking about these things of what a GM is not, is that for the last couple of years, I have sponsored a tabletop game club at a nearby high school. And I had, a couple of years ago, this huge bubble of kids. Like every Friday, I'd have honestly like 35 or 40 kids show up, 6 or 7 tables or more, 8 tables. I mean, it was massive for a while. And it was the Stranger Things bubble. It was that bubble of kids who had just gorged themselves on Stranger Things, and they had this image of what D&D. I had to remind them it was a tabletop gaming club, not a D&D club, because in their mind, those two things are one and the same. The title is the category. And that combined with actual plays, which I put in scare quotes because the overwhelming majority of actual play shows on YouTube are not actual. They are caricatures. They are enhancements of actual gaming. You know, in my view, and I was explaining this to my wife, who is not a gamer, that there are 2 general kinds of actual plays. They both call themselves actual plays on YouTube. There are the professionally produced shows like Critical Role that are not actual plays. You are watching a drama that is produced and damn near scripted for a very specific reason, and that's to get you to watch it so that they can make money off of you. And so and I don't damn them for this. I don't have a problem with that at all, but just recognize what it is and what it's not. I mean, these are many cases when you're looking at these like quasi celebrities. I mean, some of these people are voice actors. The production value is very high, and they are performing. They are not playing a game that they happen to be recording. They are performing for you, an audience, and that's not gaming. Okay, so that's one kind of actual play, which creates a very slick and very well produced, but not realistic view of what gaming actually is. Then there's the other kind of actual play, which is like Jimmy and Bubba and Sarah and whoever else sitting around a table thinking, because other people are doing actual plays and recording their games, even though it's not real, because they're doing it for an audience. Nobody games for an audience. Think about that. But those people, they set up their snowball mic and they set up their cameras and they record these let's be honest, in most cases are low production value, low energy, kind of painful to watch. And some aren't half bad, but maybe it's people sitting around a table, or more often what I see is people gaming online using Roll20 or some other virtual tabletop, and they are recording it for the consumption of some hoped for audience. Those at least have the merit of being more honest, because these are people with a game group who have a dream of making something with a channel and gaining some kind of an audience for some kind of purpose other than, hey, I want to gain an audience, therefore I'll create this game. The degree of notoriety and fame and popularity of the former type of supposed actual play is this thing that I believe has created a completely unrealistic view of what a GM is supposed to do. And I watched over the years as these kids, these high school students, you'd see the GM who was really excited about, telling a story or presenting a story. And I watched the energy level and the creativity and just the burden mounts and the energy level drops over the period of a couple of weeks or months, because they think that they bear the responsibility for making sure everyone has fun. And they're the one who has to be the one who delivers the great story with the great voices and the super action, like cliffhanger moments. And it's always this. And it's just not realistic, you know? It's the trouble too is it shifts the burden. And a lot of people, I mean, I think people are naturally lazy, unfortunately. A lot of them are. A lot of us are. We all, we can tend toward that. And so when you're the one of five or so players, and there's this one GM there, and there's this implicit belief, because of what you've been exposed to in gaming, that it's really not your job to make sure the game works. It's just your job to play your character, and you're somehow owed a great time and success and victory for your character. It distorts the relationship between the players, each player and other players, because they're only thinking about themselves. And it distorts the relationship between the group of players and the GM, as the group of players sit there, and whether they recognize it or not, they view themselves as consumers who have a rightful demand on this producer. You know, like you go with a group of friends to a restaurant, and you're going to pay that restaurant money. You expect food, good service, and you expect the food to be as advertised. And so it's a transaction. And there are reasonable demands that exist within that transaction. Obviously, the restaurant has, demands on you as well. Behave yourself, don't get pissed drunk and like puke all over the floor or something like that. But really the transaction is more about what the players are going to, or what the customers are going to get out of it. And so anyway, my comment on this person's X post was that, the GM is not the master storyteller, nor the master like producer of voices or characterizing, and he's not there to make sure that you all have fun. The GM is there to set the stage, to create a story, and to react to players in ways and play off the players and their characters in a way that increases the likelihood of everybody having fun, but they don't own the responsibility of making sure that you have fun. And it's fascinating, well, at least to me, because I have tried over the years to help students, these kids, understand, you actually don't have to GM, because I've talked to a lot of kids. They'll say, "Oh, I'd really love to DM a game," and then I quietly correct them and say, "Game Master, maybe one day you won't play Dungeons and Dragons." They'll say, I want to GM a game, but, and then you'll get this litany, this list of all these burdens and challenges that they don't believe that they're up to. Well, I'm really not good at voices. Well, I'm really not, because they have this distorted image of what they are supposed to bring to the table, literally, to ensure for the players. And then watching kids, this is so frustrating. I just hate cell phones. Cell phones at tables drive me nuts. Cell phones at dinner tables, cell phones at game tables, they drive me nuts because they create a barrier. And don't give me this crap about like, oh, I'm paying attention. Bullshit. You're not paying attention. If you're piddle screwing around on your phone to some degree, there's a piece of you that is not present. And here's the sad thing is I see a generation of these kids who they have grown up with the damn phone as a shield between them and reality. Looking at it, not one another. And so there's that challenge, first off, because they're used to it. They're used to that disconnect. But when you layer onto that this implied consumer-consumption relationship of player to GM, you have a justification. Well, look, I'm here so that I can have fun. Deliver me my fun, GM. And so nothing matters to me but what my character does. So I can sit here and piddle screw around on my phone and ignore everything else going on the table until it's my turn. And then I'm the center of the freaking universe. So I've been trying to get these kids to recognize that when everybody works together, albeit differently, every character has something different to contribute, every player has something different to contribute, and the GM has a different role at the table. But when everyone contributes for the sake of one another and the story, not bearing this unrealistic burden as the GM, everything works better. And then, of course, when you're actually present at the table instead of doom scrolling and looking up some stupid thing or playing some, oh my gosh, that just drives me crazy. People who will sit and play some stupid game on their phone while they're at a table with human beings to play a game. Like, make up your mind. Make up your damn mind. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap up here because I don't want to ramble too much. But yeah, I think that there is and if you game with younger people, in their 20s or younger, pay attention to this. I think that there's a distorted view of what the GM is supposed to bring and what the players are supposed to bring. They have different purposes, but the burden has been quietly but steadily shifted to the point where you do have this problem of there will be people who will play, but who wants to bear the burden of being the GM? If the responsibility of making for a fun session is more evenly shared, it makes it easier for everybody. And if you're listening to this and you haven't run a game before and you have this idea of like, oh, I could, but I'm afraid I won't be able to do it right. I get it. I totally get it. Like a billion years ago, when I decided I wanted to teach, which is what I did for a long time, I recognized that I knew that I didn't like public speaking. And so I joined an organization at my university that had me giving campus tours to prospective students. I found something that would give me an opportunity to develop a skill I knew I would need for this other thing. And I was scared. I had to learn to walk around campus backwards and talk about buildings and programs and stuff like that. But because I took that step, I learned that I could learn it. So if you're thinking about GMing and you have not before and you're afraid, one, you're afraid because you watch these absolutely insipid, bogus actual plays like Critical Role. That's not reality. That's not reality. That's like watching like Chuck Norris, the Delta Force, and then you join the Army and you're like, what's up? Why am I just spending all my time in the motor pool cleaning crap? Because that's not what it's like, You watch you watch Maverick or Top Gun and you think that's what, and then you join the Navy and you're like, why am I chipping paint? Because, so the first thing you need to do is free yourself of the burden of this utterly unrealistic and distorted vision of what a game table looks like. One. And the second thing is you need to be free. You need to free yourself and let go of this idea that somehow you bear the responsibility for ensuring other people's fun. Let me tell you, if you have not GM'd before and you tell your players, I'd like to, or you get some friends and you're like, I'd like to do this, and your friends are jerks to you because you supposedly don't do a good job, and you talk to them about it and they're still jerks, get some new friends. Your friends are dicks. Sorry for the language, but that's scientific fact. I have found that the overwhelming majority of people, whether it's at conventions or game stores or in friend groups or whatever, are very encouraging and want you as a new GM to succeed. And so you just have to decide, I'd like to try this, and I actually don't have to carry the whole game. And once you recognize that, then you can start to figure out ways, you can start to take the steps to do it. But yeah, I was thinking about that, and I think anyway, so I'm not going to repeat myself. I've probably done that enough already. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. If you have not GM'd before and you are thinking about it, I'd love to know what your fears are and what your concerns are. If you have, like you have recently started, or you have a good memory of when you started, and you say, "Oh, this is what happened to me. This is how I made the transition and built this up." And also just tips or advice. I would love to hear people share some tips or advice about just how do you GM? What are some good things you can do to manage a table well, come up with stories, manage the stories, and not get wrapped up in this whole false sense that all the burden is on you, because it's not. So anyway, hopefully, again, like I said, this will drop on Christmas, and hopefully you are not watching it on Christmas or listening to it on Christmas. Hope you have a lovely, lovely Christmas, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks as always for listening. Thank you as always for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can join our Discord, you can subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a great day. We look forward to talking with you.